Hey everyone, welcome back to the range. My name is Matt, also known as the King of Armor Destruction, and we have a body armor demo today. In part, a great thanks to Greg over at Hesco who sent over this plate, as well as the guys over at S-Tac who sent over a duplicate. This is the Hesco 4800 series. I do believe this is the highest level of protection that they offer commercially, at least in a level 4, as well as the lightest. This is a, I think, sappy medium cut. It weighs 5.15 pounds, so almost 5 pounds even, or 2.336 kilograms for those across the pond. It is very, very close to 1 inch thick, 1.08 inches, or 27.44 millimeters for those across the pond. It is multi-curve. You can see all those nice, sexy curves right there. We've tested some of Hesco plates in the past, and we have some more to test in the future. As mentioned, the 4800 series is a level 4, so we're going to see what kind of oddball AP threats we can throw at this today. What makes this particular panel unique, as I mentioned, it is very thin at 1 inch, and it also weighs just a little over 5 pounds, is it does have an edge-to-edge strike face, meaning that all the way out to the perimeter of this edge, if this was a 10 by 12 plate, it's a little bigger than 10 by 12, that we have ceramic extending all the way to the edge. Some other companies will offer you a lighter plate, a sub 5 pound level 4 plate, but they actually have a foam buffer ring that extends 1 inch and or more than 1 inch from the edge. So you actually truly only have 10 or an 8 by 10 of ceramic coverage on there, because the NIJ isn't going to shoot any closer than 2 inches from the edge, and for level 4 they shoot right here. So this plate offers you a true edge-to-edge ceramic strike face at barely just 5 pounds. Now, if you're a newcomer to my channel, here comes a long-winded speech that a lot of my followers are accustomed to. Over here on my channel, we're after worst case scenario. Since we have a limited number of these that were donated to us, unlike a lab, we have to put as many shots on the plate as possible. We try to maintain a 2-inch shot placement from each shot to each shot so that we can maintain some kind of fairness. Again, we're after worst case scenario. Since this is rifle armor, we're going to shoot at 45 feet. That is the official NIJ testing distance. We also shoot at 0 degrees because, again, that represents worst case scenario. We have a giant clay briefcase filled with Roma Plastilina #1 clay that acts as our compressible media. We actually just built some new briefcases that hopefully will give us a long life. It is around 75 to 80 degrees outside today, and for that clay to give you official back face numbers, you have to actually heat the clay up to right around 100 degrees, and you have to calibrate it by dropping a ball on it, given that takes time and energy to heat that clay up. We're just looking for what a representation of back face could be. If we see an M2 AP stoppage on this plate, but the back face is like 70 to 80 millimeters in my clay, in official clay, that's going to be a lot worse. We also use a chronograph, a Pro Chrono Pal Digital DLX, because we need to know the velocity of that bullet. A lot of surplus M2 armor piercing will not meet the NIJ spec of 2880 feet per second, so we actually have to load it in 300 Winchester Magnum. Also, since this employs a ceramic strike face per the NIJ, there's a drop test that you do as a preconditioning test where you drop the plate on its face 2 times. The plate over here that is marked DT and TQ has been subject to a drop test, but the plate that we received after has not. Generally speaking, with our Hesco plates, they laminate our strike face, so they do a pretty good job at being able to stop threats even when there's cracks in here. So we're not going to go ahead and drop the second plate, but we have on the first. As mentioned, I marked that with a DT, meaning that I've drop tested it, and the TQ means that I take the plate from edge to edge and I apply torque to it. And if I don't hear any cracking, I mark it with a TQ and a check mark. And finally, we put a spreadsheet here at the beginning that we kind of foreshadow all the threats that we're going to shoot at it. We fill out the velocities and the penetrations, and in the end, we actually do a tear down, because there are a lot of people who are interested to see what the inside of their plate looks like, especially if a manufacturer is claiming something like edge-to-edge protection. This gives us our confirmation that there isn't that foam or whatever kind of material you want to call it buffer on the outer edge of it, which is not ballistically rated for the threat that the plate is. And finally, I want to mention that I am not an NIJ lab, so if you see me stop a threat over here or a threat penetrates, you should always defer to the manufacturer for official accredited NIJ lab testing. And on the flip side, if you're the manufacturer and you see me stop M995 going 3,400 feet per second against your plate, you should send that off to an accredited lab and have that added as a special rifle threat on your plate. We've got our plate strapped up to our brand new clay briefcase down there, and I think we're going to start off with our standard level 4 threat, which is M2 armor piercing. It's a 165 grain full metal jacket with a steel core. The velocity spec for the NIJ is 2880 feet per second, and for level 4 and the upcoming NIJ 07 RF3, you only have to stop one of those center of mass. We're going to take 2 of those shots. We actually have our TC Compass 24-inch and 300 Winchester Magnum, so I've loaded these to be very close to the spec, although depending on the weather and the humidity and all that stuff, they seem to be varying quite a bit. We've got a Yankee Hill Phantom M2 up front. We'll place this first shot in the upper left portion of the plate, and then the second shot will probably go down in the other corner. We were 20 feet over the allowed spec that time. And then this one I'll put down in the far corner. Our first shot was right here, and our second was down here. Now, if you've watched a lot of my testing, you know that this particular area right here, for some reason, is weak to shots. I don't know if it has to deal with the curvature or not. Place those bets in the comments below. Ruh-oh, R.A.N.G.E. This is a brand new clay briefcase, and I see a penetration right there. But our second shot was stopped. You can see just a tiny hole there. So it would seem that the 20 feet per second above spec is a little too much for this particular plate. That may be the V50 rating of this plate, meaning that at that velocity 50% of the shots will penetrate. We have a little bit of back face showing here. This would be a good example down here if the one didn't penetrate. Right around 28.8 millimeters, not too bad. This one right here that did penetrate was 35 millimeters. We'll have to judge some of our different testing based on these results here. I don't think we're going to put the plus P plus against this because it'd probably blow a hole through it. It does look like we are using a boron carbide, at least that's what I remember them saying. Another 30 caliber threat that I'm very curious about is the Army's current issue AP round. This is 7.62 NATO M993, 130 grains with a tungsten core penetrator. Now, only some really high-end plates specifically designed for this threat, such as the XSAPI or the Adept Colossus or even the Stealth Armor Systems, were designed around this threat because I do believe boron carbide strike faces are weak against tungsten, and you have to use silicon carbide and a mixture of them. So we have our 13-inch SCAR 17S that we built off an Imperial Arms receiver. That's why the receiver is aluminum. We've got just a FDE stock on here. We should have it Cerakoted. But we've got one round of this that we'll shoot from this 13-inch barrel, and then we'll step up some other threats, maybe in 5.56. Before we go down and look at the plate, we're going to shoot our 5.56 threats at plate number 1. I have the full spread, I would think. We have our 55 grain full metal jacket M193. It's a ball round known for penetrating steel because of its velocity and some other crazy physics. We have the U.S. Army's current issue ball round. This is M855A1, 62 grains with a copper core and a very large and hardened arrowhead steel tip. Then we have M855, this is our green tip, or SS109, 62 grain with a lead core and a steel penetrating tip. Then we have the Holy Grail. This is M995 from NAMO. This is a 52 grain armor-piercing round with a tungsten core. We'll take the M193 shots last. It's 3 of them. Then the M855. Then the 4 shots of A1. 1, 2, 3, 4. And up first we'll shoot the M995. We have a 22-inch TC compass with a turbo 556. I think this is around 3,400 feet per second. 3283, a little slow. Now we're on the A1. Now the M855. Now the M193. All right, we got a lot of hits on this plate. Our M855, the green tip, shots number 1 and 2 were up here. Then our shot of M193 was right here, number 1, 2, and our third one was over here towards the edge. Our M995 shot was right here. An edge shot of A1 was right there. Our M993 shot was right there from the 13-inch. A1 shots number 1, 2, and 3. Place those bets in the comments below. Helper hang, hold the plates. Uh-oh, Raggy. We have a couple of penetrations here. We'll have to check and see which one's actually penetrated. But this one over here looks like that's our edge shot. That was definitely stopped. It's just a fragmentation coming off the side. Our M995 shot looks like it was stopped. And then possibly that A1 shot, which is very close to that epicenter of M2 AP. Looks like that one was the one that went through. We'll peel this cover off here in a second and confirm. Our M993 also went through down there. Confirmed our only penetrations were the first shot of M2 AP that was slightly above spec, our M993, and then the second shot of M855A1, which was really close to the M2 AP shot. Otherwise, all of the other 556 shots were contained. Now we can have a little bit of fun with plate number 2. We brought back out our 300 Winchester Magnum, and I have 2 loads that are very popular of mine. This first one is our M80A1, that is the U.S. Army's current issue ball round in 7.62 NATO, except I've loaded it in 300 Winchester Magnum. We also have M14A1. This is a really old post-World War II or somewhere around there, armor-piercing incendiary. Has a ton of incendiary compound in it. I love it. Mr. Flashy Flash. That's 150 grains. Should be going around 3,200 feet per second. We'll take that shot second. I kind of believe that this M80A1 shot, which should be over 3,400 feet per second, is representative of the new Army's 6.8 round that they have yet to release too many details on the AP version. I think they're getting over 3,000 feet per second from like 13-inch barrels or something crazy like that. 34.75. $32.30.
So much fire, so satisfying.
3 more 30 caliber threats. These were actually in 7.62 by 5.4R, or RIM. That's the Russian kind of equivalent to 7.62 NATO. This is a 150 grain API. This is our B32 API, and then this is a brass solid AP with a little sabot penetrating tip there. Picked these up from, I think, Denver Bullets and resized them for 308. We've got a 22-inch TC compass. We'll take the SBR API shot last, the B32 shot second, then the little brass with the Sabo shot first. Good velocity there.
So much fire, so satisfying.
28, 24, good velocity. And stuck brass again. All right, our M80A1 plus P plus shot was right there. Our M14A1 API plus P plus shot was right there. Our armor piercing match round was right here. Our B32 was right there. We're a little close, 2 inches, but I'll consider that. Then our SBR API was up there. As I mentioned, we defeated an alumina level 4 plate with that in the past. Place those bets in the comments below. I'll hit myself with my straps. Ho! No pass-through, folks. Now our clay's seen some better days, but there are no pass-throughs in that plate. We got quite a bit of dimple from that API up there, although that's the last shot. I had to measure back face, right around 33 millimeters. This one down here, 44 millimeters from the AP match. This guy over here is pretty bad. Right here, 44 millimeters. Not bad for a full spec velocity on the edge, but impressive. It would seem our M80A1 bullet, even though we're driving that at speeds well above the 308 capabilities, that it is not designed for any armor piercing capabilities, although it does very well. Cool. Since there's quite a bit of plate number 2 left, we're going to take 2 final shots on a threat that I think is somewhat relevant given our current world climate. This is 545 by 39 millimeters. This is 7N6M for modernized. This was donated by the Mabel Morris Small Arms Research Institute, aka my friend Andy donated this. This is essentially the same bullet as 7N6, which everybody's accustomed to, except the core has been hardened to right around 5960 on the C scale. We actually have an SSG 82 right here to shoot these out of. My son's going to take these 2 shots. This has a 24-inch barrel. There are only, I think, 600 of these guns in the U.S. It's a very, very rare gun from East Germany during the 1980s. 3066, good velocity. 3094, nice. All right, our final 2 shots, our 7N6M was right there, and then right there, good shooting deacon. Place those bets below. Hey, no pass through. I didn't expect that to, although again, ceramic does degrade shot after shot, but when we laminate our strike faces, they hold up pretty well. So very nice that both of those shots were stopped. Here is a fan favorite, the tear down part where we see what the guts look like. Here is plate number 1 of our Hesco 4800 series. We've got a fabric Cordura-like covering. I do like Hesco's coverings. They are fairly tight to the assembly and they're actually hard to get off. We do have a back face foam on here. I measured that right around 265 thousandths thick. Rather thick in my opinion. I'd almost rather have that at around 120 thousandths at the most, because I think we should replace most of that thickness with more polyethylene. Here is our backer. Confirmed our penetrations were the M993, the unfair hit of M855A1, and that first hit of M2 AP. I'm not sure what happened there. I mean, we were, was it 22 or 32 feet over the spec, so that core could just be a little harder than what it's supposed to be, or that just that extra velocity was enough to make it penetrate. And in my experience, our multi-curve plates tend to be weak in this area for some reason. Don't know why. It looks like they're using Honeywell's Spectra Shield. Our plate does appear pressed. It doesn't come apart very easily, although these back layers have come apart from me ripping it apart. Normally, if this wasn't pressed, you could thumb through this rather easily. and it's maintained its shape. That edge shot was very, very nice there, contained both of those. Here is our strike face. It is laminated. That's what this layer is here. As best as I can tell, this is a boron carbide or some kind of mixture of it. If I have my camera woman zoom in on this structure here, you can see it's kind of like grainy, sandy-like. You can probably zoom in even more. Enhance. Very, very interesting. I measured our strike face as best as I could, right around 354 thousandths. We are laminated on the front and back. You can see all the crack propagation that happens from each one of those shots. Here is our front drop face protectant. Measured that right around 120 thousandths thick. This is the typical foam that Hesco uses on the front. I kind of like this foam a lot. I don't know how it works for back face protection, but like I said, 120 thousandths for me seems to be a good limit for that foam on the back, and replace more of that thickness with polyethylene. Obviously that adds to cost and weight. We do have a foam outside perimeter protectant on this, and that just helps against any bumps and bruises to keep that strike face from being cracked. There's the front quarter cover. Our second panel confirmed 0 penetrations on the entire plate from any of those threats. Our Honeywell Spectra Shield. And as I mentioned about laminating our plates, look at how much of this plate still remains in order to take shots if you were thinking you were going to take multi-hits of certain threats that are under the guise of this protection. This laminating layer, whatever type of material and adhesive it is, it keeps our strike face intact. There's the front of it. You can see some of that crack propagation. And the one other thing I like about laminating our strike faces and then putting the foam on it is when you do take shots, you'll note that most of the ceramic that breaks away on the inside and falls down. It doesn't shoot out in front of the plate. So any fragmentation concerns like you have with steel plates is very minimal. And there you have it. Rather impressive performance.
Well, I don't know about you all, but I think the juice is worth the squeeze. When it comes to procuring body armor, when the thickness and weight go down, the price goes way up. With our Hesco 4800 series, you're looking at north of $1,200 to $1,300 for each panel, depending on your size and cut. I think performance-wise, this plate had a very good showing. I'm not sure about that initial shot of M2AP. Again, that's why I always say your mileage may vary. Always defer to the manufacturer to produce accredited lab results, and I'm sure Hesco has multiples of them to back up the performance of this plate. I think in my case, I just pick a weak spot of multi-curve designs. I'd have to have someone who knows a lot more about armor than me comment on why that particular spot in our plate design is weak there. But otherwise, all of our other threats were stopped with the exception of our M993, but multiple Hesco reps told me that the 4800 series was not rated for M993 in any way, shape, or form, but I wanted to see if there was a limit to it. As far as our 5.56 threats go, those were stopped, no problems, and a big thanks to my son Deacon, who put 2 shots of 7N6M on there with no problem. I've mentioned this in some of my other Hesco videos when we get to the teardown, that I think Hesco is going in the right direction with a lot of their build quality. We have laminated strike faces that help keep that ceramic together as long as possible. We have pressed backers of polyethylene in most of their models, which adds to our ability to catch some of our fragments and control our back face. We're adding foam on the front and back to help contain cracks and control back face. And overall, I think they build a pretty solid plate. With all that being said, it's time for me to get the heck out of here. But at the end of all my videos, I take a moment to thank all those who help make these possible, because there's a lot that goes into them. Number one is my family. My wife and son always usually accompany me out to the range, and this time we got to have Deacon throw a couple rounds down range. Number two is my Patreon and Subscribe Star fans. I have a link tree in the description below. There's various ways to contact me if you have any questions, or support me if you'd like to make a donation of any kind of monetary or ammunition, it is greatly appreciated. Number 3 is Greg over at Hesco, as well as the guys over at STAC, who donated those 4800 series plates for me to destroy with no strings attached. And of course, number 4 is you all for watching. Until next time, I'll catch you at the range.